Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to today's press conference. In today's conference, we will brief you on the Q1 China's import and export. We are happy to have with us Mr. Lu Daliang, spokesperson of the GACC. He will brief you on Q1's foreign trade. Now we'll give the floor to Mr. Lu Daliang. Ladies and gentlemen, friends from the press, good morning. Welcome to today's press conference. It's a pleasure to meet you again. I will first brief you on China's export and import in the first quarter, and then take your questions. In Q1, under the strong leadership of the CPC Central Committee with Comrade Xi Jinping at its core, we upheld the general principle of pursuing progress while maintaining stability, and we have been able to coordinate domestic international situation and COVID-19 pandemic and economic and social development and security. The economy is recovering and foreign trade get off to a good start and improving by the month. According to customs data, in the first quarter, China's trade in goods reached 9.89 trillion yuan, increased by 4.8% year-on-year. Among them, export increased by 8.4% to 5.65 trillion yuan, and import increased by 0.2% to 4.24 trillion yuan. To be specific, there are 6 features. First, export and import are growing faster by the month. In the first quarter, due to Spring Festival vacation, export and imports dropped by 7%, and in February, it has quickly returned to a positive growth rate, increased by 8% for the month. And in March, it is increasing faster to 15.5% year-on-year. In the first quarter, the overall growth rate was 4.8%, 2.6 percentage points faster than Q4. So we're seeing steady progress and a good momentum. Second, the market entities engaging in foreign trade, the number of that entities remains stable and is increasing. In the first quarter, foreign trade enterprises with export and import record registered 457,000, 5.9% increase. Among them, private enterprises took up 384, up by 7.5%. with 5.18 trillion yuan of import and export, up by 14.4%. The total accounting for 52.4% of total. In the same period, foreign-funded enterprises import and export reached 3.04 trillion yuan, and SOEs import and export reached 1.65 trillion yuan, taking up 30.7% and 16.7% respectively. Third, general trade continued to increase in terms of percentage. In Q1, general trade's total volume reached 6.46 trillion yuan, up by 7.9%, taking up 65.3% of the total, 1.9 percentage point higher than last year over the same period. Among them, export increased by 12.7% to 3.68 trillion yuan. Import increased by 2.2%, taking up 2.78 trillion yuan, and processing trade taking up 18.1% to 1.79 trillion yuan. Fourth, our export and import to ASEAN countries increased rapidly. In the first quarter, our foreign trade with our largest trading partner, ASEAN, reached 1.56 trillion yuan, up by 16.1% year-on-year. 11.1 percentage point higher than the overall growth rate, taking up 15.8% of the total. China's foreign trade with the EU, US, Japan, and ROK reached 1.34 trillion, 1.11 trillion, 546.41 billion, 528.46 billion, respectively, taking up 35.6% of overall trade. In the same period, our export and import to BRI countries increased by 16.8%, taking up 34.6% of the total, 3.5 percentage point higher. And our trade to RCEP countries increased by 7.3%. Fifth, our trade in terms of mechanical and electrical products and labor-intensive products all increased. In the first quarter, our export of electromechanical products was 3.27 trillion yuan, up by 7.6%, taking up 57.9% of the total. Among them, the export of cars, appliances, and batteries increased by 147.47 billion, 141.24 billion, and 116.34 billion, up by 96.6%, 3.2%, and 84.8% respectively. Among them, the export of labor-intensive products increased by reached 947.46 billion, up by 5.7%. The export of garments and plastics and appliances and furniture reached 241.85 billion, 170.24 billion, and 107.26 billion, up by 6.7%, 11.1%, and 0.8% respectively. Sixth, our export of energy and consumption goods increased. In Q1, our import of crude oil, natural gas, and coal and other energy products was 758.72 billion, up by 9.1%, taking up 17.9% of the total import. In the same period, our import of consumer goods was 478.74 billion, up by 6.9%. Among them, the import of meat, edible, aquatic food was 50.15 billion, 31.46 billion, respectively, increased by 22.5% and 21.9% respectively. Overall, in the first quarter, our foreign import and export demonstrated strong resilience. It has seen good progress and is improving by month. It has laid a good foundation for promoting stability and quality for the whole year. Currently, the high rising global inflation and the sluggish growth in major economies reduce in less foreign demand. It has dealt a blow to China's foreign trade. At the same time, protectionism and geopolitical and other risks further make the international economy more unstable, uncertain, and unpredictable. We have been facing many difficulties and challenges, but we need to see that China's economy is strong and resilient. It has huge potential and great vitality. The sound fundamentals remain unchanged. We believe that the good momentum will continue. Going forward, we will act on the guiding principles of the Xi Jinping thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era and implement the Party Central Committee's decisions and the decisions in the government's work report and fully implement the new development philosophy on all fronts, promote development with reform, and build strong customs. Do a good job in COVID-19 pandemic response. Roll out a series of measures. Build high-quality Belt and Road cooperation and high-quality cooperation platform. And uphold comprehensive, rigorous party self-governance, among other measures. We'll continue to improve the structure of development and make our contribution to high-quality development, high-standard opening up, and Chinese modernization. Now I'm ready to take your questions. Now please raise your questions and please identify your media affiliation. Thank you for your question. Just now, Mr. Liu introduced the Q1 foreign trade, and government work report pointed out that we need to let foreign trade play a supporting role in China's economy. And what are the highlight and positive changes in the first quarter, and what is your expectation for the second quarter?
Thank you for your question. With regard to the first quarter, our assessment is that we got off on a steady footing and made gradual progress month by month. Let me make 3 points. First, we had steady and improving overall performance. Since the beginning of this year, under the strong leadership of the CPC Central Committee with Comrade Xi Jinping at its core, we have transitioned to a new stage in pandemic response. Resumption of production and work picked up. The economy is recovering. Supply and demand sides are all improving, therefore bolstering our foreign trade. Since the second half of February, quarterly import and export registered positive growth, bringing the overall growth rate into positive territory despite drops in the first 2 months. This is also corroborated by our statistics at the administration. In March, export of fully loaded containers increased by 10.5% year-on-year, and import of freight volume increased by 20.3% year-on-year. Second, business entities are making steady improvements. The reason why we are making improvements is that foreign trade companies are working more proactively to seal deals and step up production. Like I said just now, in the first quarter, companies with import and export record increased by 5.9% year-on-year, which means that 25,000 more companies are engaging in foreign trade compared with the first quarter. It shows a strong momentum. The private businesses, their growth rates is higher than the national average. The size of their trade accounts for more than half of the national total. They are playing a positive role on stabilizing foreign trade and improving its structure. We have looked at over 3,000 foreign trade companies and their orders. The share of companies recording a rise in the value of their export orders increases for 3 months running. Third, we have solidified growth momentums. When external demand contracts, foreign trade companies are rising up to challenges and generating new growth drivers for foreign trade and played a more positive role in stabilizing and improving foreign trade. For instance, in the first quarter, our trade with ASEAN, Latin America, and Africa increased by 16.1%, 11.7%, and 14.1% respectively, accounting for, in aggregate, 28.4%, up by 2.4 percentage points. With regard to specific products, export of electric vehicles, lithium batteries, and solar panel-powered batteries grew by 66.9% in aggregate, which means an additional 100 billion RMB year-on-year increase, lifting the overall growth rate by 2 percentage points, even stronger than last year. This is our assessment of the first quarter. Regarding the future, as I said, challenges remain. Global trade is still affected by multifaceted factors, which will bring pressure to our trade. Weak external demand and geopolitical factors are weighing on China's foreign trade. To meet our goal to stabilize and improve our foreign trade and continue to leverage the supporting role of foreign trade to the economy, we will need to make unremitting efforts. Thank you. Next question, please. Thank you. My question is regarding the central and western part of China. What are the characteristics? Thank you. Thank you for your question. Thanks to the regional coordinated development strategy, central and western part of China witnessed sustained economic development. Foreign trade in these regions account for a growing share of trade in the country, which means an improvement of the regional structure of our foreign trade. In the first quarter, import and export from the region was 1.84 trillion yuan, increasing by 12.6% year-on-year, hitting a record high. There are a few salient features. First, they are making new contributions to stabilizing foreign trade. In the first quarter, central and western part of China witnessed a rapid growth in trade. Its growth rate is 7.8 percentage points faster than the national average. The share increased to 18.6%. They contributed to 45.8% to the overall growth rate of the country's import and export. Second, foreign trade entities are more vibrant. The key to foreign trade lies in business entities. In the first quarter, in the western and central part of China, companies with import and export record was 56,000, increasing by 11.3%. Performance of private businesses was particularly impressive. They recorded 1.08 trillion yuan in import and export, increasing by 32.8%. Third, progress was made in the new land sea corridor in western China. They have made cross-border transportation more convenient and logistics and operation on the corridor more efficient. In the first quarter, trade on the new land sea corridor was over 900 billion RMB yuan, increasing by 10.1%. The China-Laos Railway has been put into operation for over a year. It is playing an increasing role in China's trade with ASEAN countries. In the first quarter, the railway saw 88 trillion tons of goods cleared, increasing by 219%. Fourth, we are making improvements in border trade. We are seeing more convenient two-way interflow between central and western part of China and neighboring countries and regions. In the first quarter, small amount trade included between people in border areas recorded 889.7 billion RMB yuan, hitting a record high, increasing by 111% year-on-year. The share increased by 2.3 percentage points to 4.9%. Fifth, we are making impressive achievements in certain industries. In the first quarter, the mechanics and electronic products, export of these products in the central and western part of China increased by 12%, higher or faster than the national average. In particular, export of cars, car parts, lamps, electrical control devices is impressive, increasing by 132.5%, 47.2%, 49.8%, and 70.5% respectively. Export of labor-intensive products stood at 168.44 billion, accounting for 14.1% of the trade in the central and western part of China. Going forward, we will continue to act on the decisions by the CPC Central Committee and the State Council. We will work to enable the central and western part of China to better leverage the two markets, two types of resources, and integrate into domestic and international circulations in order to achieve high-quality development in the regions. Thank you. Next question, please. My question is on China's trade with RCEP countries. What expectations do you have? What has your administration done?
Thank you for your question and for your attention to the work of the customs. In the first quarter this year, our foreign trade to the 14 member states of RCEP was 3.08 trillion yuan, up by 7.3% year-on-year, accounting for 31.2% of overall foreign trade. Its share increased by 0.8 percentage point over the same period last year. Export increased by 20.2% to 1.65 trillion yuan, and import was down by 4.5% to 1.43 trillion yuan. It has the following features. First, in terms of countries, in the first quarter, China's trade with seven RCEP countries exceeded 10%. Among them, our trade with Singapore, Laos, Myanmar reached over 20%, arriving at 45.8%, 37.8%, and 29% respectively. Our trade with Japan and ROK rank the first and the second place among our trading volume with the other RCEP member countries, both exceeding 500 billion yuan. Second, in terms of commodities and goods, in the first quarter, China's export of electromechanical product to RCEP member states reached 827.43 trillion yuan, up by 16%. Among them, the electrical equipment, phone, car parts increased by 30.1%, 34.7%, and 19.8%. The export of labor-intensive products reached 296.21 trillion yuan, up by 21.4%. In the same period, our import from other RCEP countries in terms of iron ore was 142.64 trillion yuan, and energy products reached 122.72 trillion yuan, up by 8% and 26.9% respectively. Third, in terms of the goods enjoying benefits, in the first quarter, China's enterprises, the export goods that have enjoyed benefits under RCEP reached 18.25 billion yuan, with tariff cut reaching 480 million. That mainly include products and its plastics and its products, mechanical equipments and its parts, and inorganic chemicals, reaching 62.29 billion yuan, with 930 million of tariff being cut. And the main visa export goods include garments and accessories, inorganic chemicals, plastics and its products. 578 certified exporters have showed declarations of origins reaching 2,181, with a total volume of 2.05 billion. Going forward, the customs will continue to implement the decisions made by the CPC Central Committee and the State Council regarding the implementation of RCEP and continue to play our role in safeguarding the stability in foreign trade and foreign investment and promoting cooperation in terms of industrial chain and assist with high-quality development. Going forward, we will do the following work. First is assess the implementation of measures under RCEP in customs across the country and fully solicit the opinions and suggestions from customs and companies. Find out the real situations and roll out relevant measures and promote RCEP high-quality development. Second, we focus on the inspections and quarantine rules under RCEP. We will upgrade custom operation system and simplify the procedures and make it more efficient and reduce the cost of custom clearance. Third, we will make companies better known. We will make the RCEP policies and rules better known to the companies and build RCEP technical regulation trade. We'll continue to utilize RCEP policies and open up RCEP markets. Further question, please. Recently, we have the State Council have rolled out the list for stabilizing foreign trade. What is your comment?
Thank you for your interest. Last month, we held a press conference here today on how we will contribute to Chinese modernization. The head of our administration briefed you on how foreign trade has bolstered economic development. Last year, we at the administration are delivering on the decisions of the CPC Central Committee and the State Council. We have rolled out measures to stabilize the economy and follow through on supplementary policies. We have rolled out policies to stabilize and improve trade, 7 measures to reduce burden for companies, and 6 measures to help companies that are making production. This year, we are making assessment on the actual impact and effectiveness of the previously mentioned policies. In light of the needs of the companies, we are making improvements to these policy measures. The impact of these measures are being brought into fuller play. Last week, as you said, the executive meeting of the State Council introduced policy measures to stabilize trade. We in the administration will act on the decisions and continue our focus on helping companies to improve their import and export and improve the standard of foreign trade. We will also conduct researches and studies to give more targeted help for companies to improve the quality of their trade. Thank you. Next question, please. Last month, President Xi Jinping had a meeting with leaders from France and the EU. My question is about the trade, China's trade with EU and with France. How do you see the future development of China's trade with these two countries or regions? Thank you for your question. President Xi Jinping had a productive meeting with the leaders of France and the EU. Their meeting pointed at the direction of China's cooperation with France and the EU. We at the administration will deliver on the guiding principles arising from their meetings. Regarding China's trade with the EU is our second largest trading partner. Our statistics show that the first quarter, China's trade with the EU was 1.34 trillion RMB yuan, increasing by 2%. It accounts for 13.5% of China's total trade. In terms of export, we exported over 860 billion RMB yuan, increasing by 17.1%. The export of mechanics and electronics increased by 5.7%. We have imported over 470 billion RMB yuan, increasing by 5.2%. Import of pharmaceuticals and agricultural products increased by over 20%. France is China's third largest trading partner in the EU, and our trade accounts for 10% of China's total trade. Our trade with France was 131.9 billion RMB yuan, increasing by 2.9%, hitting a record high. In terms of export, we exported 68.1 billion RMB yuan. There is a small drop. 60% of our export was mechanics and electronics. And in terms of import, we imported 633.8 billion RMB yuan, increasing by 16.4%. aeroplanes, car parts. Import of these products increased by 183.1%, 14%, and 18.8% respectively. High-quality products from France are highly popular in China. We import the most of wine from France. Import of these products account for around 31.3% and 47.5% and 34.2% respectively. This year marks the establishment of comprehensive strategic partnership between China and the EU. In the meeting between Chinese President and leaders from the EU and France, China and Europe have extensive shared interests. We have more common interests than differences. We will work more proactively to act on the guiding principles and the common understandings of this meeting. We will do our level best in the administration to facilitate economic and trade relations between China and the EU and with France and advance high-quality development. Thank you. Next question, please. Thank you. This year marks the 5th anniversary of the announcement of a free trade port in Hainan. What have you done in the past 5 years in the development of the free trade port and launching it as an independent customs union? Thank you for your question. 5 years ago, on this particular day, on the occasion of the 30th anniversary of the establishment of Hainan Special Economic Zone, General Secretary Xi Jinping announced that the Central Committee would support Hainan in developing an island-wide pilot free trade zone, in exploring and developing a free trade port with Chinese characteristics, and in formulating its policy and institutional framework in a step-by-step approach. As we advance the building of a free trade port, Hainan's trade also entered a fast-track lane. First, there is strong momentum in trade that consistently hit record heights. Over the past 5 years, growth averaged 23.4% in foreign trade in the region. It crossed the 100 billion and 200 billion yuan mark. In the first quarter, progress was made in Hainan's foreign trade. Its trade stood at 57.74 billion RMB yuan, hitting a record high, increasing by 32.5%. Second, business entities are more vibrant. Over the past 5 years, companies in Hainan with import and export record. Back in 2018, there were only 600 companies engaging in foreign trade. And last year, the number was 1,500. Private businesses have become a major driving force of Hainan's foreign trade. In 2018, the share was only 20%, and last year it was 50%, increasing and this year it was further lifted up to 54.9%. Third, Hainan has become more diversified in terms of its trade partners. The number of its trade partners increased from 160 countries and regions in 2018 to around 180 in 2022. The import and export growth rate between Hainan and the EU, Japan, and Brazil are 17.6, 5.9, and 33.2 percentage points faster, respectively, than its average trade growth. In the first quarter, Hainan's trade with these 3 regions and countries have sustained double-digit growth. In the past 5 years, we at the administration are delivering on the guiding principles of General Secretary Xi Jinping, as required by the Master Plan on the Development of Hainan Free Trade Port, we are working to meet the goal to launch independent customs operation by 2025. First, we have made pioneering efforts. We have launched free flow through the first line and efficient control of the second line policy in the Yangpu bonded port. On institutional innovation, we have rolled out zero tariff policy and relevant oversight measures with regard to raw materials, transportation vehicles, and yachts, as well as self-used production equipment. Third, on risk prevention, we have established a counter-smuggling mechanism between Hainan, Guangdong, and Guangxi. We have carried out rounds of campaigns to crack down on illegal secondary sales of duty-free goods. Going forward, we will continue to control, to manage the island and further liberalize it. We will make sure that we will liberalize it while we are making proper measures to manage the free trade port. We will also step up efforts on stress tests. First, on stress test, we will expand the pilot program of the first line liberalization, second line control policy. Second, we will step up efforts to advance the development of a smart oversight platform of customs in order to facilitate smooth clearance. Third, we will step up efforts to roll out an oversight mechanism for free trade port in Hainan and explore monitoring model of customs. Thank you.
I have two questions. My first is, do you have a forecast for export growth this year? Would you expect exports to grow this year? And secondly, you spoke about how trade with ASEAN countries is increasing rapidly. Can you give us some details about what products specifically the exports of what products to ASEAN are growing over the past 3 months? Thank you.
请翻译一下问题。
彭博社记者，我一共有2个问题。第一个问题是，我想问海关总署是否对今年全年的出口目标、出口增速有一个大致的展望？第二个问题，您刚刚提到中国与东盟国家的贸易呈现飞速增长的态势，能否详细介绍过去3个月具体在哪些产品上中国对东盟的贸易有所增长？谢谢。
感谢您的提问。
Thank you for your question. Let me take your second question first. China's trade with ASEAN countries. In 2013, President Xi Jinping proposed the building of an even closer community with a shared future between China and ASEAN. Over the past 10 years, our annual trade growth rate increased by 9.9%, faster than China's national average, in particular 4.3 percentage points faster. ASEAN has become China's largest trading partner. In the first quarter, our trade with ASEAN countries was 1.56 trillion yuan, increasing by 16.1%, faster, 11.3 percentage points faster than the national average. More specifically, the major driving force are as follows. First, policy dividends of RCEP. ASEAN is an important partner of China within RCEP. We are all benefiting from the entry into force of RCEP. In the first quarter, our trade with ASEAN accounts for 50.8% of our trade with RCEP member states, more than half, I would say. We are having closer supply chain, industrial chain interactions. We are more integrated, which brings sustained growth of intermediary products. Our trade in this aspect was 531 billion RMB yuan, increasing by 11.9%, 1.7 percentage points faster than last year. On energy and agricultural cooperation, we are working more closely with ASEAN countries. We are deepening our cooperation with ASEAN countries in these aspects. We import 91.3 billion RMB yuan of energy products. At the same time, we are also stepping up import of high-quality agricultural products. In the first quarter, we imported 54 billion RMB yuan of agricultural products, increasing by 17.4% year-on-year. Since January the 8th, we have improved interflow of personnel, which contributed to border trade between China and ASEAN countries. In terms of border trade, China's trade with ASEAN countries reached 38.6 billion RMB yuan, increasing by 100.23%. China and ASEAN are each other's important trading partners. As we deepen the implementation of RCEP and enjoy its dividend, as we step up efforts to continue the upgrade of free trade area between China and ASEAN, we expect even better performance in terms of trade. With regard to our forecast for the whole year, as I said, we do face serious situation globally, most particularly a weak external demand coupled by geopolitical factors and others. Regardless, we still see strong resilience in China's economy and also in China's trade. Our assessment is that this year we will be able to improve the quality of this year's trade and increase trade this year. We will work in line with the decisions of the State Council and do what we should do at the administration in order to stabilize trade and improve its structure. Thank you. Next question, please. Thank you. This year marks the 10th anniversary of the Belt and Road Initiative. Trade with Belt and Road partner countries is faster than average. What are the highlights? What have your administration done in terms of trade with Belt and Road partner countries?
Thank you for your question. This year marks the 10th anniversary of President Xi Jinping's proposal of the Belt and Road Initiative. Over the past 10 years, the overall percentage of our trade with the Belt and Road countries has increased from 25% to 32.9%. In the first quarter, our trade reached 3.43 trillion yuan, increased by 11.8%. 12 percentage points than our overall trade increase. Among them, export was 2.04 trillion and import was 1.39 trillion, up by 6.3%. As for highlights, I think they are mainly in the following several features. We have reached stable growth in key areas. To ASEAN, Southern Asia, Central Asia, our trade increased by 16.1%, 12.5%, and 32.2%, as well as 4.1%. Our export to Saudi Arabia and Kazakhstan and other countries increased by 21.9%, 33.6%, and 36.7%. The second feature is our connectivity is better. In the first quarter, our export of intermediate goods was 1.1 trillion, increased by 18.2% year-on-year, taking up our taking up 55% of our total export to regional countries. Among them, lithium batteries and audiovisual products increased by 50.4% and 23.9% and 21%. Our import of agricultural products also increased rapidly, increased by 58, has reached 584.57 trillion and 926.6 billion. And our trade by land also increased rapidly. The connectivity with the BRI countries continued to increase. China, Laos Railway, the Land Sea Corridor in the western sector have all provided new driving force for our trade with the regional countries. In the first quarter, the export by rail and by highway increased by 24.6% and 61.8%. Fourth, our investment in infrastructure has more cooperation with regional countries and these investments have driven our export trade with relevant countries. We have been able to advance new type of infrastructure cooperation, and this has effectively helped with our export with relevant countries in many regions. Our foreign trade in terms of contract increased by 92.9% and 103.8% and 74.3%. In order to act on the important spirit of President Xi's remarks, we have been able to do many things, including in the first quarter, we signed 13 inspection and quarantine documents and agricultural entry certificate of 8. Second, we also facilitated trade and signed relevant documents. We signed documents with Iran, Costa Rica, and including the IEO mutual recognition agreement. Third, we have increased our quality of software and hardware and make sure that our project with Kazakhstan operates smoothly, thus facilitating our trade with relevant countries along the line. Serving high-quality development is also one of the key priorities of customs for the year. Going forward, GACC will attend the 3rd International Cooperation Forum of Belt and Road Cooperation. We will facilitate with the mechanism of cooperation with relevant countries and deepen our cooperation in terms of border inspection and quarantine and make our contribution to high-quality development. Thank you. Next question, please.
北京广播电视台记者提问：我们注意到近年来，我国新能源汽车、锂电池、太阳能电池等绿色。
In recent years, we noticed that our export of new energy vehicles, lithium batteries, and solar cells have good performance, and they are a new driving force of our foreign trade. Please introduce to us the green and low-carbon products export in the first sector. Thank you. Thank you for your question. It's also a question of wide concern. Recent years, the world began to attach greater importance to new energy and low-carbon products. The greater demand in the international market also have driven our export in this aspect. In the first quarter, the export of electric vehicles, lithium batteries, and solar cells reached 264.69 trillion yuan, increased by 66.9% year-on-year, taking up 4.7% of our export total, 1.7 percentage point higher than last year. The export of these three kind of products have the following features. The first is that it has greater contribution to our export growth. In 2022, the overall export growth of these three products increased by 1.7 percentage point. And in Q1, the contribution was 2 percentage point. Second, our export with main trading partners increased rapidly. In the first quarter, we have export records with over 200 countries and regions in terms of trade of these three products. EU, US, ASEAN, ROK, and UK are our top 5 markets of export. And the export increased by 88.7%, 88.1%, 103.5%, 121.7%, and 118.2% respectively for these two markets, taking up 71.6% of export total. Third, different market entities all began to play a part with greater vitality. In the first quarter, private enterprises, foreign invested companies, and SOEs have all registered rapid growth in terms of export, reaching 79.3%, 40.9%, and 121.9%. Among them, private enterprises export took up 65.4%, 4.5 percentage points higher than last year over the same period, and also higher than the overall export of new energy products. Fourth, electric passenger cars export tops the trade of these three kind of products. In the first quarter, the export of electric vehicles was 64.75 trillion, increased by 122.3%. It registered the fastest growth rate among the trade of these three products, taking up 43.9% of the export of automobiles total, 5.1 percentage point higher. In the same period, the export of lithium battery reached 109.79 trillion yuan. The growth speed was 94.3%. The export of solar cell exceeded 90 billion yuan, up by 23.6%. So this has provided new driving force for export and make sure that our foreign trade is increasing in quality and quantity and making contribution to global green and low carbon transition. Thank you. Next question, please. Thank you. Recently, the executive meeting of the State Council proposed that it will guide companies to develop developing countries' markets. I would like to ask what are the situation in the first quarter regarding this aspect and what are the measures?
Thank you for your question. The EU, the US, and Japan are traditional export markets of China. Last year, export to these three places account for, in total, 36.6%. Export to ASEAN countries account for 32.9%. China's export markets is becoming more diversified and balanced. We are making steady and improving performance in trade. We registered positive growth in our trade with most of our 10 top trading partners. With US, Japan, and EU, trade with ASEAN, Japan, and EU grew by 28, 5.3, and 0.3% respectively. And our trade with other developing countries or major markets are also increasing, which means the structure and balance of our foreign trade is better. You mentioned the executive meeting on policy measures on foreign trade. We in the administration have always been fulfilling our duty and looking into measures on how to help companies and improve foreign trade. Going forward, we need to faithfully deliver on the decisions of the State Council and carry out researches with regard to the needs of companies in order to provide more targeted and effective support and services for companies. That is how we will do our best to improve the structure and quality of foreign trade.
那好，最后一个问题，这边。
谢谢主持人，吕司长你好，我是新华社记者。我们都知道，民营经济在国民经济。
We know that private businesses are important in China's economy. During this year's two sessions, there have been important decisions made during the two sessions on private businesses. These are reassurances for private businesses. You also mentioned that average growth rate of trade by private businesses is still faster than the national average. What do you think are the bright spots of private businesses? Thank you. Your question actually captures the bright spots of China's foreign trade. Over the years, private companies, guided by the new development philosophy, are pursuing high-quality development. On foreign trade, for 4 years in a row, private businesses have been the major driving force for China's trade. Last year, they account for 50.9% of our total trade. For the first time ever, their share is more than 50%. In the first quarter, import and export was 5.18 trillion yuan, accounting for 52.4%. Let me be more specific. First, both the number of businesses and the scale of trade are increasing. In the first quarter, private businesses engaging in foreign trade were 384,000, increasing by 7.5%. The value of their import increased by 14.4%, 9.6 percentage points faster than the national average. In particular, export grew by 18.5% and import by 6.4%. Second, markets are more diversified. In the first quarter, private businesses are engaging in trade with Belt and Road partner countries and other member states of RCEP. The trade was 2.01 trillion yuan, 1.61 trillion yuan, respectively, increasing by 27.9% and 21.1%, lifting China's trade with these countries or regions. Private businesses trade with the EU and with the US also account for more than half of China's total trade, namely 51.4% and 54.9% respectively. Third, on traditional and green products, in the first quarter, export of labor-intensive products were 788.9 billion yuan. Agricultural products, 123.8 billion yuan, accounting for 83.3% and 76.7% respectively. In the first quarter, the aggregate export of new energy vehicles, lithium battery, and solar-powered batteries shot up by 79.3%. Fourth, import of primary products and consumption products is also increasing. In the first quarter, import of iron ore sand, 92.7 billion yuan, copper ore sand, 28.1 billion yuan, coal, 45.1 billion yuan, increasing by 25, 26.1, and 131.9% respectively. Import of consumption goods, 222 billion yuan, increasing by 18.5%. We in the administration will continue to deliver on the two unswervingly, and roll out policy measures to reduce cost, facilitate logistics, and improve services in order to better serve our companies and advance their high-quality development. We will do our best. Thank you. This is the end of our press conference. Thank you very much, Mr. Spokesperson. Thank you all.